This is Diamond D with where I'm giving you some love advice, some happiness advice, some everyday good advice to make your day a little more loving. Hi, I'm Diamond D, and this is Love and Happiness, where we will discuss everyday topics about love and happiness to make your day a little bit better. My guest today is Dr. Alesii. She received her training from Duke University after obtaining a PhD in clinical and community psychology from the University of South Carolina. She has over 20 years of experience in the mental health field and is committed to making the greater community healthier psychologically. Thank you, Dr. Alesii, for being on today's show.
Thank you for having me.
I appreciate you.
Yes, thank you.
So let's talk a little bit about your practice in Durham.
Okay, yes. So I am a licensed psychologist, and I have a practice in Durham. I pretty much focus on people who have chronic health conditions or are dealing with stressors in their life, and I try to help them with developing coping skills for managing it. I also see people who have had trauma in their life as well, and also have an interest in military personnel who I see sometimes.
How did you get involved in this field?
I've always was told by my friends as I was growing up that I was a great listener, and I thought, well, this would be a good idea for me to go into psychology, and I decided to go into that field. And the more I learned about it as an undergrad, I just loved it, and I decided to pursue my PhD after that.
Wonderful, wonderful. You're definitely living your passion.
Definitely.
Do you have any advice on how to find your passion and your purpose and your calling and sort of make it their career? From calling to career is what I like to call it.
Mm-hmm. I guess, this is sort of the advice I have for a wide variety of issues, but really listen to yourself and be self-aware. I think that way, if you notice that there are certain things that give you joy, pay attention to that and notice what actually sparks your interest, and that way you can actually find the spark in your life that actually can lead to a really good career for yourself. So I would say listen to yourself, be self-aware, be very mindful of how you're feeling.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any influencers in your past that sort of helped you to be the person that you are today?
I would say I've had a lot of mentors in my past who were very influential, but I would say my earliest ones, of course, were my parents, but also my first grade teacher, who was very helpful to me as growing up. I used to be a very anxious kid, and she just helped me to sort of learn how to calm myself down, and I actually use those same strategies as an adult and with people that I see in therapy.
Very good. I know you say your practice deals with chronic pain. So I want to discuss about, heartbreaks and breakups and divorce and how people can cope and respond to those life-changing events.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a common one that I see a lot of people also who are just having a lot of emotional pain as well. And sometimes what happens is they're not even aware of how much pain they're actually in until maybe their hair starts falling out. That's a common one. Or they're having a lot of chronic physical pain. And so again, I try to help them to sort of be more proactive and mindful in their daily life of how to just take that time each day to sort of understand how they're feeling, and also to do some type of a relaxation exercise just proactively. And that can actually help you whenever you're dealing with any type of stress, including relationship stress too.
How would you handle a situation where you observe a friend or some other loved one who's going through some breakup or divorce, and they're just acting a little bit unbalanced, but you don't know how to sort of approach the subject with them?
That's a good question. Actually, typically what I recommend people do is to come at it from how you're feeling about the situation. So say, I'm really been concerned about you. I know you're going through a whole lot, and I just want to know that I'm here for you. If there's anything that I can do to help you, I can help you in that way, but I'm just wanting to let you know that I'm very concerned about you because of X, Y, and Z. And if it gets to the point to where the person is a danger to themselves or anyone else, it's probably best for you to get a professional involved in that. But if it's more of they're just sort of being more to themselves, or maybe their personality, so to speak, has changed, maybe sort of approaching them more of letting them know that you just have a lot of concern for them, and not more of in an accusatory term like you don't probably want to avoid saying you have changed or something's wrong with you. It's more of like, I want to make sure that I'm here for you. And usually people are receptive to that.
Yeah. And then when they go through a process of perhaps talking to a professional about their divorce or their traumatic breakup or anything that's causing them some type of stress in their life that, their friends around them are noticing them, how can they be supportive of them while they go through that process of getting that mental health counseling or that mental health coaching as a friend? How can you support them?
I think probably just being able to listen more to them, like asking them how their day is going, or how are things like going with therapy, for example, and just sort of pausing and actually waiting for them to respond and letting them open up to you. A lot of times, I think we're uncomfortable as a society with silence sometimes, and so just being able to sort of open yourself up to the friend and say, I'm here for you. I want to know how you're doing, and then just waiting for them to say whatever it is that they want to say. That's a big way of doing it. And then also, if they're saying that, hey, I've been going to therapy, say, oh, that is really great. I'm glad you're taking care of yourself. Like really reinforcing it in that way can be really helpful.
Just being present and being there.
Right.
I think we have time for our first caller. Hello, you're on the air with Love and Happiness with Diamond D and Dr. Alesii. How can we help you today?
Hi, Diamond D. I have a question that I want to ask. Do you think people who are single have more stress than married couples? Is it better to be married to relieve some stress?
Well, that's a really good question. Actually, I think it's more depending on the situation. Some, studies have looked at that, and they said that in some situations, if the relationship is very stressful in itself, that can also cause more stress. But if someone who is single is actually feeling more stress because of feeling lonely or feeling like they're missing out on having a really meaningful relationship, that of course is very stressful in and of itself. So I hate to say the common phrase that psychologists say, but it depends on the situation. It's really hard to make a generality about that, but I think it definitely would depend on the person's mindset and if their marital relationship or the romantic relationship is actually not stressful.
And how do you cope with that loneliness, like after a breakup or that new single feeling? What are strategies that people can use every day just so that they are not going into some loneliness spiral that can lead to depression?
That's a good question. I think one of the things that can be really helpful, again, is knowing what you like to do. Sometimes when we're going through a really down period, we can forget to do the things that we enjoy doing. Like, say if it's, going swimming or going for walks around the neighborhood. We sometimes can sort of go into almost like a little cocoon of ourselves and not really do those things anymore. So even if you don't feel like it, getting out and actually doing it. Sometimes we think that if we're not feeling like doing it, it's best that we don't. But actually, the emotions of wanting to do it will come as long as you first do the behavior. So getting out there and doing things that you used to do can be really helpful.
Yeah, first take that step, make that first action item step so that you can start feeling better about yourself.
Right.
Yeah, that's good advice. That's good advice. What would you say to a person who goes from one broken relationship to the next broken relationship to the third broken relationship, and they just embark upon this self-destructive behavior when it comes to love?
Yeah, I've seen that happen a lot, actually. And a lot of the times what's happening is that there's these patterns that's going on with them and with their relationships, and they don't even recognize what the patterns are. So usually when I'm working with them, I help them to sort of figure out what is in their mindset while they're single that's making them want to seek out a particular relationship, and what's in their mindset when they're in a relationship, and what makes them want to stay or want to leave. And when they get to understand these patterns, that can help them to sort of break the cycle of constantly going from one relationship to the other, sometimes even really poor relationships, one behind the other. And also it depends on their own motivations for it. Like sometimes people just don't want to be alone, and they're so afraid of that that they do this avoidance thing where they just try to avoid being alone, and they'll just pick up anyone. And so at this point, you have to be aware of what your own tendencies tend to be, and then try to sort of stop that cycle.
Good. Okay, I think we have time for another caller. Caller, you're on the air with Love and Happiness with Diamond D and Dr. Alesii. How can we help you?
Yes, I have a question about stress. I read somewhere that positive thinking can alleviate stress in your body. Could you please elaborate and talk about the benefits of positive thinking?
Okay, that's really
Okay.
good.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's been a very big thing. I've noticed a lot of people asking that type of question. It's a good question. So, positive thinking can go a long way, but I think it's also important that people recognize what's causing the stress to start with. Because if you just say, "Oh, I'm just going to think positively about the situation," you're still going to be in a lot of stress. And I think first it would be really important to do a lot of self validation about what your feelings are, and then figuring out what is the evidence for whatever negative thought you have. And then once you understand what the evidence for that particular thought is, then to actually work towards challenging it and then coming up with a more positive spin on things. So if someone is in a relationship and they feel like it's that they're not a really good partner, what's the evidence that they're not a good partner? And then thinking of what is evidence that they are a good partner. And then at the last stage would be to think of a more I guess honest way of looking at that, which may be, I do have some positive qualities and also some negative, but the positive outweigh the negative. And that way it makes it much more realistic, and the person actually can believe the positive thought.
That's real good. Because I had always incorrectly understood positive thinking as being mindfulness. How is mindfulness different than positive thinking?
So mindfulness is typically you just think of one thing in the moment, and you can use mindfulness for a variety of situations. So for example, if you are having chronic physical pain, you may want to sort of acknowledge the fact that you're having this pain. This is how I'm feeling in the moment. These are the emotions that I'm having. You may even say, okay, I'm going to be washing dishes while my back is hurting. Let me just mindfully do that. Okay, I'm going to focus on the suds, how hot the water is, what does it smell like. Use all of your senses. It's a way for you to do one thing in a moment. And mindfulness can be really helpful with trying to induce relaxation. And so that because of that, it can be helpful for stress management is mindfulness.
I see. I know that you alluded to pain management. I know that sometimes, and I've heard this, and I don't know if you think this is true or not, but I've heard talk of people who've been married for extensive number of years, like 50 years, 60 years, and then one dies, and then the other one dies in a short period afterwards, and people say, oh, he died from a broken heart, or she died from a broken heart, from losing their spouse that they've been together with for such a long time. Do you think there's any validity in dying from a broken heart?
Yeah, I think there is. I think because, when you lose someone who's so close to you, that is a huge stressor for you to have. And so if you're not dealing with that stress in a positive manner or in a way that's really conducive to you, then yes, the stress response is very real, and it can lead to you having physical issues, such as, chronic pain, like I said before. It can even affect you if you already have diabetes. It can make the diabetes worse. Certain chronic illnesses it can make worse. And so if a person has been together with someone for 50 years, usually that means they have some type of a chronic illness. And if you have stress on top of that, it can make it worse if you're not dealing with that stress.
I see. What are some of the stressors in a relationship?
Oh, it's so broad. I mean, I think the number one issue a lot of people talk about is money and finances, and being able to sort of come to some type of an understanding with regards to agreeing to how to handle the finances. And I think sort of an underlying issue with that would be communication. If neither partner is really communicating with each other and telling the other how they're feeling, that can definitely impact the relationship as well. So I think really the communication part of it, not understanding your own emotions in the relationship and how it's impacting your behavior, and only looking at the partner and all of their faults, that can also really impact the relationship and cause more stress too.
And I think that I agree, money, and I think kids sometimes are stressors, only because I've seen people have children and then I don't know what happened to their relationship. It's almost like it just dissolved. I mean, if you're in a situation in a relationship and you have a child and you notice that your relationship tries to deteriorate or is headed toward deterioration, how can you handle that situation to make your relationship whole again?
Yeah, I think that's also a good question. Is sometimes what happens is people will wait too late before they look into couples therapy. Because whenever you have a child that's in the relationship that's new, that actually is a new stressor. I mean, we love kids, but they are a stressor. And so if you haven't figured out how to handle stress within your relationship and how to communicate, that can be a big issue. And so talking to a professional about that to help you with developing some skills and how to cope, that would be really helpful. But I would say also understanding what your own stress is with relating to the child and being able to communicate that with your partner, it would be very helpful. And then having that space to sort of be able to relax, both of you, to sort of have that mommy or daddy time or both, it's really important to reconnect. But a lot of times I find that it's because the child's extra stress, they haven't really figured out how to cope with that.
Dr. Alesii, I know that you deal with stress issues and chronic pain in your practice. Can you talk a little bit about how a person can be supportive when dealing with a partner who has a chronic illness?
Yeah, I think one of the things that can be really helpful when you are a partner of someone dealing with a chronic illness or chronic pain is to engage in self-care. And I know self-care is such a really big buzzword, but actually it's very real. And so being aware of how you're feeling, getting outside support for when you're dealing with whatever stress that may come your way can be really helpful. That way you can be fully present with your partner who's dealing with the chronic condition. The other thing is being open to listening to the needs of your partner. And if your partner is going to tell you what they actually need, try to be open to that and try to solicit that a little bit from your partner as to what their needs are. So I would say probably listening more and being aware of what your needs are and getting some outside support.
So do you think it's beneficial for someone that has a chronic illness like diabetes or cancer to get that kind of psychological support while they're ongoing treatments?
Definitely. I think it's really good for the actual patient to actually get those types of support, but then also for the partner to also get support, because of course if you have a partner who is dealing with these issues, these conditions, that's going to be extra stress for you too. And so sometimes that can lead to more arguments in the relationship, and so having that support for yourself, a sounding board or therapy, can be really helpful.
Do you think it's healthy for adults to cry as a way of a therapy to release emotions? And how do you know that dividing line from, just crying because of a particular situation in that one moment versus crying all the time because you're depressed?
Right. I think I believe that crying can be very helpful, and I feel like pretty much every emotion is useful. And so if a person is crying a lot and they are having a lot of tears, I feel like that's okay. Sometimes what happens is people become very fearful when they start to cry a lot, and then that fear leads to them feeling more despair, and then it leads into this big spiral of where they just don't want to cry at all. And I think if they're aware of it, if they don't try to avoid it, I think that can actually help a lot. And then sometimes using some type of a mindfulness technique with that can be helpful, so to try to calm themselves down, like let the tears come, but then focusing in on one thing in the moment. If it's raining outside and the rain hitting the window, or if you're noticing your own breathing and trying to slow down your breathing and taking slow and deep breaths to help calm you down, that's perfectly fine. But I think what the problem comes into play is when people try to avoid the tears and avoid the emotions.
I see. I understand. What do you feel, or how do you feel about people who are married that go through sort of the change of life? Like, men go through their own individual change of life after they're married for a significant period of time, and then they get older in age, usually over 50. And then women go through their sort of change of life or menopause. How do you navigate that and the stresses that those particular items cause in a relationship?
I think first being aware that there's a lot of stress involved with that, with whatever change that's coming your way. It could be, menopause, or if it's a man, I'm going through some physical changes, or if the kids are now grown and it's just the two of you by yourselves, it's like, what do we talk about? Just being aware that this will actually happen, and being almost accepting of that, which doesn't mean that, you sort of lie down and take it, but it's more of just accepting the reality of the situation, and that way you can work towards coming up with solutions together. So if you know that that's a stressor, you can actually do some type of relaxation strategies, proactively instead of just reacting to it. So if you're in a relationship and you know that this is a change that's going to happen, maybe together working on yoga together, or doing something you both enjoy, like going out boating or going out for walks and doing a lot of self-care things together. And that way when it does come, it doesn't affect you as much. When it does come, then maybe sometimes a little bit of therapy can be helpful to help you with coming up with some type of additional coping strategies, communication strategies, and things like that. But those would be the main things I would say would be really helpful.
Very good. Very good. What would you say is the best career advice or educational advice that you ever received?
Mentorship.
Mentorship.
I wish I would have known that earlier in my career. But finding a really good mentor, someone who can help to steer you through, can be very helpful. And even peer mentorship, people who are going through it at the same time, whatever career path you want to get on, can be very helpful to you in whatever career you want. Mentors can just open up so many doors and can sort of tell you some tips of the trade of whatever career path you're trying to go on to. So I would say mentorship is really key.
Yeah, definitely, I agree. And I think that so many people misinterpret that they only need a mentor at a certain early age in their career development, as opposed to having a lifelong mentor as an adult and even as a senior, when you're trying to still establish yourself and navigate where you want to go in life. So that's
exactly. And I still have mentors. So yeah, definitely. I mean, it doesn't matter what stage of your career you're on, just having that extra person or people, you even have a team of people, can be really helpful.
Where can people find out more information about your practice?
So you can go to www.wellnessdurham.com, and that has a lot of information about me. I'm also listed on Psychology Today as a therapist, psychologist there. And also I have a phone number, 919-589-3550, where I can be reached too.
Wonderful. And I would like for you to leave the viewers with your best love and happiness advice.
I think one of my best advice I could give would be to really make sure that you know yourself, and also that way you can actually communicate with your partner how you're feeling. Because if you know who you are and how you're feeling, that can make the relationship go such a long way.
Thank you, Dr. Alesii, for being on today's show. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
You can check out more of Love and Happiness on News Talk 1450 in the D.C., Maryland, Virginia area at 11:30 a.m. every Thursday on The Chris Thomas Show or the News Talk 1450 app. Thank you to the entire Chris Thomas Show radio family, and especially my big brother, Chris Thomas, who put me on his radio show. You can follow more of Love and Happiness on SoundCloud, Facebook, IG, and Twitter. I'm going to leave you with one of my favorite Love and Happiness quotes from Bob Marley. He says, "Only once in your life you find someone who can completely turn your world around. You open your heart knowing that there's a chance it may be broken one day, and in opening your heart, you experience a love and joy that you never dreamt possible. You find strength in knowing you have a true friend and possibly a soulmate who will remain loyal to the end." Thank you for watching Love and Happiness with Diamond D. God bless you, and I love you.